Welcome to Upper Pylon 2. Our mission is to provide you with an in-depth review of every episode of DS9 in the order they were broadcast. Tonight's episode is Trials and Tribble-ations, and this is Chris.
And this is Blair from Ontario, Canada.
And this is Matt in Buffalo.
And this is Matt from Arizona, and you are cleared for docking. Well, guys, this is a very special week, and all of a sudden I'm feeling very, very retro with these bulky communicators and huge tricorders and very 60s-looking sets. And that's because we are here to finally celebrate one of the best episodes, I think, of the series, hands down. And I don't think there's going to be much debate on this one, and that is Trials and Tribble-ations, the 30th anniversary special tribute episode. So let's get right into it. Synopsis: our crew are in trouble for going back in time to visit the Enterprise during a particularly troubling remaining. When will they invade the animated Trek-verse? Hopefully the answer to that is never. This is the 6th episode of Season 5. It first aired on November 4th, 1996. Teleplay by Ronald D. Moore and Renee Echeverria. Story by Ira Stephen Bear and Hans Beimler and Robert Hewitt Wolf. And it was directed by Jonathan West. Guest starring, of course, this week, the entire cast of the original series. By the way, Chris, you wrote the notes this week.
Yes.
I take issue with that because there was no Sulu in this episode.
Yeah. He was there in spirit.
He was actually on Voyager at this time, though.
Yeah,
so
he
was. He got his props in that episode.
But George Takei was not in the original Trouble with Tribbles episode. That was when he was still filming Green Berets. Jack Blessing as Dulmer, as Luxley, Charlie Brill as Arn Darvin / Barry Waddle, and unknown actors as Random Bar Brawl Fodder. So this is a very special episode. We can't wait to talk about it. So Chris, take us into Trials and Tribble-ations.
Surely will. So, two stiffs arrive on the bridge, and Kira greets them with gusto. Turns out they're from the Department of Temporal Investigations, and they have zero sense of humor. So in his office, Captain Sisko plays the good host as the boys ask him to tell his story. You see, it all starts with the sacred Bajoran orb, which just happened to be the Orb of Time. Strangely, though, when the Defiant went to pick it up, they also took on a passenger. And this will be our first clip.
Humans! I never thought.
This is Mr. Waddle.
Gary.
We are taking him back to the Federation. He was trapped on Cardassia when the Klingons attacked.
I'm a merchant. I deal in gemstones, kivas, and trillium mostly. May I?
Help yourself.
And you know what Cardassians drink in the morning? Fish juice. Hot fish juice. Ractigino. After 6 months, I was hoping the Klingons would invade. At least they know how to make coffee. Even if they are foul-smelling barbarians. Sorry.
I wouldn't take it personally, Worf. I rather like the way you smell.
Yeah.
Sort of earthy, peaty aroma. With a touch of lilac.
So the crew and good old Barry were halfway home when O'Brien, who's still harping on the smell of our resident Klingon, suddenly experienced a chronoton surge. And they're not in Kansas anymore. In fact, they're in the past. And hey, what's that out of the view screen? It looks like the Enterprise NCC 1701 as we break to opening credits. What an intro.
Well, if I can add some perspective just from, and I'm not sure if you guys, I don't think Hanson or Chris saw it first run.
No, I saw this on VHS years later. I was going to ask what this was like seeing it in first run.
I tell you, this was hyped up for weeks. So this wasn't one of those, it's just the next episode. We knew something big was coming, and to think that Kirk, and you didn't know quite like as you were leading up to it, what it is going to be, but you knew Kirk and Spock were going to be in it, and you're thinking, holy cow, what are they going to do? How are they going to get Kirk and Spock and the original cast in this? And then it slowly started coming out on how they were going to do it. And again, this is before the internet really existed. And there was no real chat groups, or if there were, I certainly wasn't on them. There was dial-up internet back then, if it even existed. But this was exciting, and I remember a couple of our friends of mine in university. We planned this night out. We got together early. We ordered in food that night. It was one heck of an event. And then when the show started, you could hear a pin drop. All of us, and normally I just would watch Star Trek on my own, like just, I'm going to watch it. It's a Wednesday night or whatever, but this was a viewing party. This was so exciting to see, and to see that Enterprise on there, and, and that clip there was just phenomenal. The excitement was throughout the episode. So this was a great intro, not so much of what we saw, but what we were, or not because it was like riveting plot line, but it was just because of what this represented and what we were going to see. This was so exciting.
Well, this is at the point where I was watching it live as well, and I honestly don't remember by what means I was hearing this. Maybe early internet or newsletters or magazines or something like that. But I remember very much along those lines and it stuck in my mind, again, I'm the spaceship nerd, that there is a lot of excitement that we will be able to see 3 iconic ships and stations, the original Enterprise, a D7, and K7, and then the Klingon ship in CGI. And I remember that being like a really big deal, because it will be the cleanest you've ever seen these ships, because that's something that's a little lost now, because all the special edition Blu-rays of the original series and the remastered that are on syndication as well, that's kind of old hat now, is seeing cleaned up, redone special effects that look not state of the art, but intentionally like a little bit 60s vibe in CGI. But this is the first time you got to see any of those kind of things in its clear such a state. And I remember that being a hugely hyped element to a certain amount of the fans. And I remember that was very much a thing that I looked forward to and loved seeing. I mean, it's silly now looking back at how much the CGI stuff is just overwhelming. But just to see the couple glimpses of the glamour shot of the Enterprise in that was just awesome to behold.
I mean, I didn't watch this on my big screen TV for this. I watched it on my phone on Netflix, but so maybe my perspective is skewed. But I still thought the Enterprise looked good. Like it doesn't look like it's terribly dated like some of the other CGI.
For the most part, I think most of the CGI for Deep Space Nine holds up fairly well with the spaceship stuff. And I'll actually kind of call it out when we get to it in one of the big Dominion War space battles, where the CGI actually looks quite bad, because I think they just had to rush it out. But yeah, this looks really nice. And we can talk about it a little bit later on, but the Forrest Gumping of the actors in looks acceptable. It looks either good or just like, that's a little funny, but it works for this episode.
No, but on a '90s television budget, when that technology was originally made for a big budget movie, I mean, it looks pretty good. It doesn't look like a normal split screen.
Right. The closest, and this is showing a hand for the review of this episode, the closest I got to maybe criticizing this episode is the very on-the-nose joke about the temporal investigation agents, Dulmer and Luxley, the Mulder and Scully anagrams. Mm-hmm. That was like, you didn't necessarily have to go there, but it's hardly an issue. That's the biggest criticism I have. It's like,
But it's setting the tone for the episode, isn't it? If
Sure.
you're in the know about what those names actually represent, because I'm not sure everybody got the joke back then, but it sets the tone right away that this episode is going to be nothing but fun. We're not taking ourselves way too seriously. This is a fun look back at one of the original series' most beloved episodes. So, I mean, stuff like that doesn't really bother me.
No, and to be clear, the actual portrayal and the lines that those guys got were really good. Their time travel jokes and how they're completely devoid of senses of humor, that worked really well. So the biggest criticism is the names were slightly too goofy. So with that in mind, I don't want to dwell on it. They were good too.
Right. No, they were great. And I mean, one of my favorite portions of them is going to be when Chris comes back with the notes coming back from commercial. They're just, hating what a menace Kirk was in terms of a temporal prime directive violator.
Speaking of which, let's go right into it. So Luxley and Demure have no time for that Kirk fellow. The Cisco jumps directly back into his tail. The Enterprise was surrounding K7. Hey, that seems familiar. Turns out Barry the car salesman, he was lying. He's actually a Klingon, and he's a spy. So they basically go over the plot of Trouble with Tribbles, and the assumption is that Darby is going to try to change his stars by sabotaging Kirk. Him. Once our crew realizes the jig, they decide to go deep undercover, which leads us to our next clip.
Captain. Lieutenant, actually, I didn't want to push my luck. Looks good in you, sir. Thank you, Ensign.
Wait a minute, aren't you two wearing the wrong color? Don't you know anything about this period in time? I'm a doctor, not an historian.
In the old days, operations officers wore red, command officers wore gold.
And women were less.
I think I'm going to like history. The original Enterprise used an old-style duotronic sensor in red. If we wait for just the right point in the scan cycle, we can decloak the Defiant for almost 3 seconds without being detected.
Is that enough time to transport us aboard?
Barely.
Chief, here are the coordinates. The captain and I will start on deck 4 and work our way aft. You and Julian should start on deck 21.
And work our way forward.
What about the station? Little of it is habitable. Most of K7 consists of storage areas and industrial fabrication facilities.
But it isn't as tight as it is on a starship.
Remember, try to avoid contact with people this time.
We're talking about a land shift in the scan cycle.
Fast.
So the first part of that clip, I think, is the money part of the clip, when they're making all the jokes and they're first in the uniforms and the reveal of them in the old school uniforms.
And the hairdos, they got Bashir. They get Bashir the DeForest Cali look, and they put Jadzia in the beehive.
All right, we might need to take a break for editing here. I think there's a lot of people, and I dropped in and out because I thought maybe it was me, but we might be having a lot of bad connections here.
I think it could be Hanson because during that entire clip, it was almost.
Crunchy.
Yeah. But Hanson can't drop out, can he? Because he's.
Yes, I can. I can drop it on my computer.
Okay. Do we want to do a test again, one at a time, to see who's the culprit here?
I think it's me. So I'm going to restart my computer. I'll be right back.
Okay. Wow, I don't know. Like, at least a clip doesn't matter. We can overdo that, but coming out of that clip, it was almost unlistenable.
Yeah, we'll just have to try and recapture that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just take it straight.
I know what I said. I'll just go with what I said.
Okay.
And then we'll
At
roll from
first, because Hanson dropped out a couple times, even reading the intro, and I thought maybe it was just me initially. So,
there. Oh, that stinks.
Yeah, you actually dropped out from "This is Chris," and that's all we got. Actually, it was perfect. Like,
Yeah.
This is Chris. You didn't say where though.
did you do that on purpose, Chris, or did you actually say where you were from?
I paused for a second and then said where I'm from.
Oh,
Never heard it.
But
yeah,
okay,
that'll be fine.
awesome.
It's just there'll be
Yeah,
a
it's
couple
fine.
parts we have to try and be clever with the editing. Maybe.
Oh, great.
I know.
You're the editor, right, Blair?
Yeah. And it's a short edit week. I'm working the next 6 out of 7 days too. Damn it.
For what it's worth, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a short episode because it's just, it was really good, right? Yeah, really good. And then,
Yeah.
what can you? It's tough to.
And there's not a lot
really
of meat to it, really. Like as I was
No.
watching it, I was like, man, this episode is nothing. It's straight cotton candy.
But it
It's
is
good cotton
fun.
candy.
Yeah,
But it is
yeah.
good cotton candy.
Yeah,
Save
true
that
enough.
stuff for.
Yeah.
We're using half of the good stuff up right now.
So Smonsky, what do you think?
It's technically
Penguins?
still being recorded.
Yeah,
That's
true.
I was a little frustrated. Just the officiating made it really tough to watch, and then you miss out in just the horrible coverage on the U.S. front. How just bad our TV guys are talking about. Like they defend Crosby like you wouldn't believe, saying Subban deserved to have his head bashed into the ice because he
really?
dances occasionally, and it's just like it became very difficult to watch.
Oh, that's disappointing.
And
The-
Chris,
our broadcast was more of just let them go. They're both giving it to each other.
yeah, ours
you know.
wasn't that. It was Crosby is the saint,
Uh,
and like I will freely admit he's the best player in the league, but he has issues and he gets away with a lot of dirty crap. And yeah, he takes some too, but he's not a saint out there. But yeah, Chris, so SmackDown.
Mhm.
We were walking in and I let my friends remind him like, oh, there's probably going to be security. Make sure if you have like a pocket knife, leave it behind. And they're like, oh yeah, no problem. Like, on your keychain. So we go in and like 6 inches in front of me is a guy holding his like 2-year-old son or daughter. I couldn't make out the gender, whatever. And probably like a 4-year-old son, like right at his hip. And like, he is literally like a hand's width in front of me because we're all just piled up in line. And as he's going up to the security, he rummages through his pockets and tosses out all his crack pipes and stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's funny. And then he goes up
Crack
to security.
pipes or like
No, it was like,
pot pipes?
no, it was a crack pipe.
Crack pipe.
Guaranteed.
Wow.
Yeah, my buddy leaned over and he's like, you need a crack pipe? And then-
Buffalo.
yeah, Rochester.
Right.
Rochester.
Rochester.
So that's not even the bad thing. He goes up to the security and they have metal hand detector wands.
Yeah.
Goes over him and like, sir, what's in your front pocket? And he kind of just shakes his pocket and he's like, nothing. And he shakes it and I can see directly in, completely visible, hanging out of his pockets, a 4-inch wooden handle on like what would be a 5-inch butcher knife blade. And security just goes, go on in. I'm like, do I mention the guy holding his 2 kids right in front of him? Butcher knife. And I'm like, I didn't see that, I guess. And it's just like, holy shit, that's weird. And then the crowd is bizarre.
Yeah.
Bizarre.
Yeah, they
So
are.
I went to a lacrosse game up in Buffalo, pro lacrosse, and I made the observation I've never seen so many First Nation people in one place at one time before. I feel really bad saying it, but I've never seen so many slow adults in one place before in one spot. And I'm like, oh boy, it's like an observation you can't not notice. That said, goofy, fun. Just
Yeah.
a lot of goofy